Taking you off here.
What? Good evening. On the West, MPs, MSP colleagues of all parties, friends and all protocols observed. Good evening, I'm Liam McCarthy. I'm one of the co-conveners of the Malawi cross-party group. Everybody is equally welcome to this joint Scottish Parliament Malawi cross-party group and the Westminster all-party parliamentary group on Malawi. And we're pleased to be breaking new ground, having invited members of the APPG on malaria and neglected tropical diseases. We understand we haven't visited Malawi. I recognise my colleagues Alexander Stewart, who is joining us online, and Sarah Boyer, who is here at the top of the table. The event is being recorded and will be put out online after the event so others can catch up with proceedings. Your ongoing participation signifies your consent to participating in the recording, but if you have any objection to that, please let me know. We've got a variety of speakers here this evening, very much looking forward to hearing them in due course, both here and online from Malawi. There'll be an opportunity to open up to questions, and there's a chat function also online as well. We'll conclude, as I say, the presentation discussions hopefully as close to 7 o'clock as we can to allow a bit of informal networking, lubricated by Malawi gin and tonic for those who don't drive. I have apologies for this evening from my MSP colleagues, Dr. Alison Allen and Mark Rothko, and it's a joint meeting with the Malawi APPG. We also have apologies from Patrick Grady MP, Lord McConnell, Alan Dornans MP, and Kirsty Blackman. And having referred to Lord McConnell, I've also been asked by Lord McConnell to offer a very warm invitation to take part in a major conference on volunteering and global citizenship being organised by the McConnell International Foundation in partnership with the Scottish Government on Thursday, November the 2nd. That's Thursday, November the 2nd. A link to the meeting will be shared in the chat that is online, and there are copies of our flyer here in circulation. And my governance assistant is sharing that with you now. Thank you very much, Stuart. So the approval of minutes of the last meeting, the printouts of the minutes of the last Malawi CPG, which is also held jointly with the Malawi APPG. They're around the room, and I'll link the minutes that have been posted in chat for you online. First of all, are there any amendments to the minutes? That function, I don't think. No indications down the room. Are we content, therefore? And can I, if so, can I have a proposer in a second, please? Ideally, somebody that was there. Alexander's good. Excellent. That's good. Thank you, Alexander. As the minutes of the last meeting reflect, we read that the CPG Secretary would ask the Scottish Government about the awarding of £8 million pledge from the Scottish Government to tackle climate impact in Malawi through the Climate Just Communities project. And the answer to that question came back on the 27th of July, so while Scottish Parliament was in recess. And the response stated, and I quote, "The Climate Just Communities programme was procured as a contract via fair and open procurement through the Scottish Government portal. The lead suppliers for these contracts have now been notified, and on the 24th of August, First Minister Humphrey Eustace announced the recipients of this £8 million fund over 3 years are SCIA, DAI and NIRAS. I'll give you a breakdown of that, but that is where the funding has gone. This being our AGM, I'm now going to pass to Stuart Brown, the Secretary for the election of CPG office bearers. And yeah, over to you, Stuart.
Thank you very much, Liam. Our three co-conveners, William MacArthur MSP, Alexander Stewart MSP, and Dr. Alistair Allen MSP, have indicated happily that they're all willing to stand again for the position of co-convener. May I ask if there are any other MSPs present physically or online who wish to stand for the position? Nothing heard, nothing seen in the chat. May I therefore invite a proposer and a seconder for the re-election of Liam Alexander and Alistair. Heather, thank you.
I'd like to second that.
Thank you very much. So Liam Alexander and Alistair are duly re-elected as co-conveners of the Malawi cross-party group. For the position of co-vice convener, Mark Ruskell MSP and Sarah Boya MSP have both fulfilled the position, and Mark has indicated that due to practice of parliamentary business, he's not going to stand again. We offer the cross-party group's thanks to Mark for the time that he's dedicated over the past year. Happily, Sarah is happy to stand again. May I ask if there are any MSPs present in person or online who would like to stand with Sarah as co-vice convener? So may I ask please for a proposer for Sarah Boya to be re-elected as co-vice convener? Both, thank you. And a seconder, Peter West, thank you, Peter. Super, so Sarah is duly re-elected as co-vice convener of the Malawi cross-party group. I'd just like to take the opportunity on behalf of the CPG to thank the co-conveners and the co-vice convener very much indeed for their commitment, hard work and loyalty. We're very fortunate as a CPG to have such dedicated individuals. Thank you very much. Perhaps we could record a round of applause.
Thank you very much indeed, Stuart. Can I reciprocate as we go into the election for the Secretariat, which has been performed by the Scotland Malawi Partnership since the group was created, and the ex officio role is currently held by Stuart Brown as the interim CEO of the partnership. I would ask first if there's any expressions, alternative expressions of interest in this. I emphasise unpaid role. Either in the room or online. No. So I think again, I'm looking for a proposer and a seconder. Proposer, thank you very much. For a seconder. 2 seconders. Take your pick, Stuart. It'll be recorded in the minutes. Thank you very much. As I say, we have been blessed over the years to be extremely well supported by the partnership. And I know Stuart's in an interim role, but he has taken up the reins since David's departure and has been an enormous help, I know, to myself and the other MSPs involved in the various kind of co-convener and vice convener role. We continue to be one of the most active and in Parliament, and that wouldn't be possible if the work was done. So I would like perhaps affording the same appreciation to Stuart. Right, with no undue false modesty, we move on to the main and most exciting item of business for this evening, which is on the subject of the malaria vaccine. In 2021, Malawi's President Chakwera launched the Zero Malaria Starts With Me campaign, joining Pan-African movement to strengthen local, national and regional efforts towards the malaria-free Africa. In that year, the World Health Organization stated that nearly half of the world's population is at risk of malaria, of which there are 247 million cases worldwide, causing an estimated 619,000 deaths. The WHO African region is home to 95% of malaria cases, 96% of malaria deaths, and children under 5 accounted for about 80% of all malaria it's due to borrowing. This evening, we are joined online from Malawi by Professor Makwatsa Dipando, who is Associate Professor and former Principal at Community University of Health Sciences. You're very welcome, Dr. Mapanda. And in the room, we have Dr. Chris Moxon, Clinical Senior Lecturer at Parasitology, University of Glasgow, and his colleagues from the University of Glasgow, Dr. Dagmara McGuinness, Professor Lila Shiner, and we have Lizzie Bridget Chongwe Dibala, who's a PhD student, and Watipenge Farmari Nyasatsulu, who is an MSc student. And I've been reliably informed that the speakers have got carefully choreographed contributions that will last for about half an hour. So we're going to hold them to that, but I'll leave them to decide who's to open and how you introduce yourself thereafter.
Hello, good afternoon, good evening. What a good evening. What a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the invite. I'm Chris Moxon, so I'm a clinician in pediatric infectious diseases. I'm employed by the University of Glasgow, but spend about 9 months a year in Malawi, and where I work in the pediatric hospital there and also do research on malaria. What we're going to talk to you a bit is about the vaccine, but also the work that's still left to be done and the importance of partnerships. So we've already heard some of the sobering statistics about how many cases there are of malaria and how many deaths there are. This represents significant progress compared with the turn of the century, where there were probably 2 million deaths and probably over 600 million cases. But actually, since 2017, there's been increases in cases and deaths. As we took our feet off the gas, people thought that malaria might almost be solved, but malaria didn't take its foot off the gas. And that has meant that drug resistance, which is a global problem, which is increasing resistance to anti-malarial, to the vector control, has advanced further and led from about 200,000 cases and about 400,000 deaths in 2017 to the statistic you see now, nearly 600,000 deaths and nearly 270 million cases a year. So there's finally effective vaccine. 60 years of work has led to a vaccine, RTSS, that has been approved by the World Health Organization. It's been shown to be effective in clinical trials, reduces infections by over 40% and disease by about, severe disease by about a quarter. So you will notice on the one hand, there's good news. On the other hand, it's not perfect. The vaccine's been rolled out across 3 countries, Ghana, Kenya, and Malawi, to do a larger phase 4 study. This was not done by me. You can see many of the people who've been involved, many of the organizations that have been involved in this huge rollout and monitoring the success and the effects of this rollout. So what they showed is that at a larger scale, in this large number of 1.7 million children, for example, in Malawi, that's across 12 districts across the country, that the protection was similar, and particularly probably reduced deaths by severe cases by about a third. But that's good news, but protection's not long-term. So in studies that have been done over a period of time, you give 4 doses of vaccine, and then over years, vaccine wanes. We're very familiar with that from COVID, that vaccine efficacy can wane over time. There's then rebound infections that mean, and you also are not getting natural boosting of vaccine from getting clinical exposure. So actually the cases then go up again. So there's still work to do. There's risk of vaccine escape. We need to develop new, better vaccines. There are some in the pipeline, but there's still much work to be done. We need, for the foreseeable future, new, better malaria treatments. And that's what we're working on in my group. And that there's a major opportunity here. This too much work in the past has been led from Northern Hemisphere countries, where all of the facilities and the funding went through Northern Hemisphere or Western countries. With investment from the Scottish government, a new lab's been built, which my practice is going to tell you about. But we see that the future is about partnership and making sure that these are done with equitable partnerships between Malawi and other countries in Africa and organizations. So my practice is now going to join.
I hope you're able to hear me. Thank you. For me, it's just to carry on what Chris has said. But first and foremost, let me say thank you very much for inviting us to be part of this. And we hope that we can discuss further on what needs to be done. As indicated, most of this work for the vaccine that you've asked for was done in Malawi. And I think from the picture, you can see the multidisciplinary team, but also teams coming from different institutions. Now, for that to continue, I think learning from the story of COVID and other cases where most of the technology is in the West, but when you look at diseases like malaria and others are found in Malawi or in Africa where there is less amount of equipment or amount of people that are able to do the work, we thought there should be a change of the story where investment is done and we discuss what kind of investments needs to be put in there. So this is just a story as an example of what can be possible. On the top, you are seeing a team of Malawians that had come about 10 years ago to Scotland, and we were taken to Glasgow. Initially, the discussion was what Glasgow can do for Malawi. But during the course of our stay there, we were able to change the narrative together to say, what does Malawi need, rather than we want to do this particular case. Then from that visit, we sent a team from then the College of Medicine, now that is the Kamuzu University of Health Sciences, to come and learn about systems that are there at a globally competitive university like University of Glasgow. And from then on, instead of just saying this is what we're going to do, we invited our colleagues to come and see on the ground what infrastructure we have, what challenges we have. And that's what I'm trying to show you on the bottom there, where a team from University of Glasgow came to Malawi and we discussed. And it was only after this that we decided to come up with a laboratory that will be hosted within Kamuzu University of Health Sciences, run by us, but which will be open for any international collaborator. Now, what I'm trying to show you now, in the next slide, you will see that there is a room that was given by the university in Malawi. I'm hoping it's changing because from where I am, it's not changing. But the story is a room was given to the project to say, can we transform this particular classroom into a laboratory where we would put in equipment that is comparable to whatever lab you can find in the West, but it will be hosted within Malawi. So what I'm trying to show you is the story where we were able to transform on the left on my screen a classroom to what we have in the middle there. Secondly to that, we realize is the challenges that we have in Malawi. For instance, I think electricity is a problem. So we were able to install a solar energy that runs this particular lab. As I speak, the lab is completely run by the solar power, and the grid, normal grid, is like a backup. Now, from that, we have been able to show that having just that lab is not enough, but we can now start to have questions on any other. It's like a platform where we can do any study which is of importance to Malawi, but is also importance to Glasgow. And to cement that, you will see that in the next slide, we were able to invite the Vice Chancellor from the University of Glasgow to have a formal memorandum of agreement where we open up in terms of collaboration. And on the top corner, I'm showing you that lab now is hosting students that are doing various type of studies. Currently, we have one that is working on COVID vaccine to see if the vaccine, how it is responding in different disease states that are common in Malawi, including population that has got malaria, because we want to see that if the vaccine of COVID, the response with somebody who's suffering from malaria, which might not have been tested when these vaccines were being done in the West. We want to see the answers on the ground. But also on a funny note, but just to appreciate that this work is collaboration and it's going to be there for forever. On the lower part, we have our very close friend of ours, retired Professor Paul Garside, where we dedicated a room to remember where we've come from. And in that laboratory, we have equipment where people even from University of Glasgow can come and work on their part, and I think you hear that. We are also looking at work to do with non-communicable disease like cardiovascular diseases. Not only that, this particular platform is providing now telepathology, where we have a scanner for slides and also biopsies that are taken from people suffering from cerebral malaria and other diseases, and we take it to collaborators to the UK, collaborators in the US to work on diseases that are there because of the presence of the platform. And as we speak now, because of the good work that we've done, we've been asked to do the same with University of Zambia, where a similar lab is done. So I would want to say that from starting from a little, working in partnership, understanding each other, we have now a platform that we can be able to use for various types of work, for malaria in particular, because we are interested in malaria, but other diseases also. And this is hosted in Malawi. And if people are trained in the Scotland, they can come back and find a platform where they're able to do that. And there is more exciting news that I would want maybe Lilac to talk about how this laboratory is helping in the work going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mopasa, and thank you all of you again for inviting us. My name is Laila. I'm a researcher studying the biology of drug targets, both in malaria and in a related infection. And I'm also the co-director of a core cluster of research excellence that I will shortly introduce to you. And what I wanted to speak to you today about is following up from what Chris and Mopasa were just talking to you about, how this kind of investment that the Scottish government made in the Blantyre to Blantyre facilities that Mopasa was just discussing enabled not only the research and training that is required to tackle the issues that Chris was talking about, the issues that you invited us to speak about, but also formed a model for us to further these kind of symbiotic partnerships. And so one recent example, I hope I can share with you.
Receiving it. Worked in rehearsal.
Oh, there we are. One recent example for how we furthered symbiotic partnerships on the back of the model that the Blantyre gave us, is this successful bid that we made for Aurora and the Guild. So you can see the acronym there. Aurora is the African Research University Alliance, and the Guild is the Guild of Research of European Research Intensive Universities. And in this bid, we formed together a core, a cluster of research excellence, of advanced infectious diseases research and training. And we will collaborate with the bid for EU money, and the one the Guild will help with that. And we've already received some starting money, which is 200K, which is good for us to get started. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is that I think in this sense, the kind of investment that the Scottish government made facilitated a much wider engagement across Africa and the EU, with Glasgow as the kind of beating heart of the network. And so just in a couple of words about the mission of this core and how this ties back to what you were asking us about, is working on important diseases such as malaria in endemic countries. And so our mission is to understand pathogens and their infection and inform interventions such as the rollout of malaria vaccine and the understanding of how efficient it is, as Chris provided you some information on. And the other very important mission is to enhance representation of African researchers in the field's kind of global leadership. And that has a specific focus on female researcher leadership in the field. And so we do that through 4 kind of major schemes. The revolving door scheme, which is the most important one, and Mufasa gave you a really good example of that. I don't come in and say, these are the types of samples I would like, and then I take them back and do my research, but rather we ask our partners what they need for their research, what they would like us to look at, and tell them what we need, and it's a real revolving door, and researchers from here come there and back, and so everybody learns the skills that don't exist in their home country, and I think that's a really important thing, and for equitable research capacities over time. We have other schemes that I won't talk about too much, an open lab, which means that every member has access to all the facilities that already exist within the members, and we're planning some combined postgraduate programs, and to kind of enhance a network that already starts existing between early career researchers across the members. And so with this, I'd like to pass you to our next 3 speakers, which will provide you kind of a window into this revolving door model that we're all working with, and through their personal stories.
Okay. So my name is Dagmara Martinez, and I'm senior researcher working with the.
Could you just put your microphone on?
Sorry, I'm used to speak very loud here. So my name is Dagmara Martinez, and I'm senior researcher working with Chris, but I'm based in Glasgow. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about our group, which is a prime example of the revolving door lab model, and provides kind of unique opportunities to conduct research and training across 2 continents, which is great. But also we face certain obstacles which are rising mostly from differences in infrastructure as well as cultural differences. But we try to do our best, and we just overcome them with shared resources and shared solutions. And as you can imagine, I was very excited when I got the opportunity to go to Blantyre and conduct some research. So my head was filled with all those experiments I would conduct on site while providing training. And of course, almost immediately I had this reality check. And I just came to the realization that not all milestones which I set up for myself before I came to Blantyre are achievable while I'm there. So instead of dwelling on it and being all sad and depressed, I decided that I will take a step back and look how I need to address my approach to training and the research, kind of to include local constraints and level the playing field for all of us. So initially I started with kind of basic stuff like openness and transparency in the research and the training to help build better teams, and in the same time provide platform to develop new skills and improve knowledge. And this model seems to work quite well for us, because stemming from this and from all the base which we built both in approach and methodology to work in malaria, we now transferred into my recent project working around the sepsis. And this kind of shows that we work both ways, and also we can both provide benefits both for UK as well as worldwide. And with this, I wanted to give a voice to Wati, who started her adventure with science as the member of our team in Malawi, and then she decided to come to Glasgow to do her postgraduate degree.
Hello everyone, my name is Wadvenge Nyasuru, and as Dagmar mentioned, I'm a research assistant in Dr. Chris's lab, And I was working in Malawi, and as part of strengthening research capacity in Malawi, I was awarded the Bay Trust University of Glasgow Joint Scholarship to do a Master's in Immunology at the University of Glasgow. I just completed last month actually, and I'll be returning back to Malawi in December to apply the knowledge and the skills that I've acquired from the University of Glasgow in the research of malaria back in Malawi. And coming to the University of Glasgow has been such a wonderful experience. We got to see a whole different world and be exposed to, and you get to see the difference in the availability of resources, both with regards to manpower, but also actual equipment and society. So it has been quite empowering. And in the picture, starting from the right is Dr. Rowan Tidatanga that has arrived in Scotland just a couple of weeks ago on the same scheme, and he will also be undertaking his master's degree. And second to him is Dr. Victoria Mukula that was also on the same scheme, and she's just returned to Malawi a couple of days ago, and actually should be working at the Blanta facility. And that goes back to the point that Dr. Malpata mentioned, that this facility also provides an opportunity for us to come to Glasgow, acquire the skills, but then go back to Malawi and have somewhere where we can actually put to use the skills and the knowledge that we've acquired here. And in the picture at the bottom is a microscope that is in the Paul Gasside room, and that laboratory that I actually got to use before I came to my master's for some of the work that we're doing in Dr. Chris's lab, and that work was quite fundamental to some of the research questions that we have in our group, but also it did provide me with adequate skills and experience that sort of qualified me for the award. So this opportunity has been quite rewarding, I would say. And we also have our Liz in the picture that is now proceeded to a PhD program that she will also talk about. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. And my name is Liz Divala. And just to echo a few things on what he has touched about on the training opportunities, I'm currently a molecular biology PhD student at the University of Glasgow, and I'm from Malawi. And proudly to say that I'm one of the individuals who is being trained through this partnership on what is called the Wellcome Trust Integrative Infection Biology PhD program. And I was part of the first cohort when this program started in 2020. Before I joined University of Glasgow, I was trained as a lab scientist at the Kamuzu University of Health Sciences. And back then it was just called Malawi College of Medicine. And just to echo what my professors have already said, the value of the partnership between University of Glasgow and COHES is immeasurable. And through the training opportunities that are being offered by this partnership, I was able to start my PhD journey at one of the world's best universities focused on malaria research. And for malaria, it's a disease that I've had first-hand experience in, and it's just been amazing to be in labs where I can research and learn more about this parasite. And also the beauty of this Wellcome Trust PhD program is that it promotes interdisciplinary research, which is key in building the capacity for Malawi's scientific sector. And in terms of the Blanta facility that we have seen rising over the years, it's improving lab capacity for Malawian scientists. And this provides space for visiting scientists as well as Malawian scientists to have tools that can be used to conduct cutting-edge research. And also all these skills that we're learning from here, acquiring through the trainings that we're getting at the University of Glasgow, would be useful in enriching the infrastructure as well as the knowledge that can be translated to the other scientists who are working in this facility. And also lastly, for me personally, going back home, I will be able to have access to advanced research tools, and also being with University of Glasgow, that gives me long-term collaborations with the University of Glasgow. And also this tool will be very important for training, for in-house trainings for other scientists who might not be able to travel to the UK to get such training. And yeah, through this platform, I could also be able to contribute through teaching. So I'll hand over back to Chris. Thank you.
So I hope we've been able to convey to you that for this terrible disease, there's been real progress and a real breakthrough with a vaccine. But that vaccine is nothing like as effective as measles or many of the vaccines that we're used to receiving in childhood. And this problem isn't solved. There's a lot more work to do. And to do that work, to really have a chance to beat this disease, we need the best partnerships. We can only most effectively do this in partnerships with others in Malawi and across the region. We showed you the sort of big vision of partnerships across Africa to investigate infectious diseases. And we talked a bit about a revolving door model where we can, where we showed you in a very small sense how that can work, where people rotate, train, share skills, learn from each other. I'm in a room where I don't need to convince anyone on the importance of investing in malaria, on research in Malawi and Africa. But perhaps some of the people that you speak to do need to be convinced. Why should the UK invest in malaria? And of course, the humanitarian reason, Liam MacArthur explained the horrible malaria statistics, the deaths and cases that still exist. And that should be important enough, but maybe for some it isn't. But perhaps there's also a kind of wider view about why we should invest in talking about these partnerships. And I have a Chichewa proverb, Malendo Ndi Adza Nkulo Kakutwa, and I have not pronounced that as well as Wati or Lizzie would be able to pronounce, but I've tried. But what it means is that you don't know where the best minds are coming. It actually literally means the guests may bring the sharpest blade. You don't know where the solutions are going to come from. You don't know where the brightest minds are going to come from. And so we can be visionary, invest in the bright minds of the future and in partnerships to, that's the only way we're going to solve this. So thank you very much.
Indeed, Chris, and to all your colleagues, as impressive as the quality of the research is, and the quality of the choreography that you know, all 5 or 6 of you, was as impressive almost. I'm going to open it up to questions. I don't know who wants to kick off. Yes.
Hi there, my name is Darren Cosgrove from University UK in Scotland. And first of all, I just wanted to say it's really incredible the way you've been able to bring together expertise with intention, with capital, with cultural, local place knowledge, and technology to forge these strong, flexible, and vital links in this fight against malaria. That is amazing. I'm really curious. Very often, this kind of scale of collaboration, the sort of biggest hurdles are where you learn the most important lessons. And I wondered if there's any of those hard-won lessons that you can share with us today when talking about partnerships.
Chris, do you want to intercept and then throw one or more of your colleagues in if you
Well, do you want to answer that question? I know there's been a lot of successes, but a lot of hurdles in setting up the lab.
Yes, I think lessons have been learned because some of when we were setting it up, it was during COVID, so we had to delay because in Malawi, being geographically, we get our things from outside. So that delayed in terms of the infrastructure itself. Secondly, is the knowledge that maybe we had fast-tracked the investment in the equipment before we had more individuals trained to have the questions that can be answered. That we are now having it with Elisis and other people that are coming, but also having partners coming from Glasgow and other countries. Lastly, it's not cheap to learn such a lab. So we are now thankful because going forward, Kamuzu University of Health Sciences has been given like a special, what we call a strategic partner of Scottish government. And that allows us to make sure that we invest in the people as we build up capacity, bringing up more research, bringing up systems that are there. Lastly is the issue that you shouldn't only invest in scientists, you need to also make sure that we invest with a support service, because a scientist requires to have the funding to be accountable, whatever money is there, but also procurement, because I think Chris and you know, you need to have to procure things that you cannot easily find in Malawi. So to have that system, it takes a while, and having this long-term investment is something that I think we've learned, and I think the Scottish government, I'm aware they're trying to do the same with Zambia and other countries, because that kind of investment, I think it future-proofs the investments that are done for sustainability. And lastly is that maybe a good story is that you invest £1, you can end up having in the end 10 pound, because that's what has happened here, because we put the infrastructure, but some of the equipment has come from other sources. The putting in of the solar energy, now people are learning that even institutions like ours can learn from here. I can tell you that this lab, it is producing more than what is needed for the lab, and we are giving the access to the grid of the local campus. So those are some things that we never thought would benefit from here, but there are also challenges which I cannot hide away from there. Thank you. But maybe you can also add from that side.
Maybe a sort of a big picture challenge with partnerships that are very big is the practicalities are a little challenging. You imagine if you work together to an assignment when you're gonna graduate, and you work in an assignment of 4 people together, everybody thinks the other person is gonna do the most important part, and then it never gets done. So I think what's very important is to very carefully select the leaders who are co-leading the partnership, and to be people who are very motivated about the outcome of it, and so that everybody does their share.
It just occurred to me that the investment that's gone into this and the capacity that's been built, I mean, is it safe to assume that that's now a centre of excellence within Malawi? I mean, the reach may go beyond that, but that actually be counterproductive to look at creating other hubs in other parts of the country. I mean, is community university now the best place to direct future investment, to provide a continuity, etc., or is the aspiration to look at that and try to replicate that model in other universities in Malawi, or is it looking at other countries in Africa, where in Zambia, wherever else, and trying to create that single hub where you can focus the investment, you can focus the human resources, not just in the research, but that support work as well.
And to start by saying that I think hubs are critical, Kamuzu University of Health Sciences is a critical hub in Malawi. But whether, I don't want to answer the whole country about what the best strategy forward is, and I guess it might depend a bit on the area that you're trying to advance. So the Blantyre has a certain set of facilities. Kamuzu University of Health Sciences, a University of Health Science, but there may be other locations that are better for alternative research. But Mopatsa, I don't know if you want to say anything else about that. I feel you're more qualified to answer on behalf of the country.
Yeah, for me, I think it's a seed that you put at the university. because we've worked with our colleagues for over 10 years, we've built in a reputation and even learning what our colleagues want. However, I'll give you an example. In the laboratory there, we've been discussing with Police Scotland in terms of how they would want to help Malawi in terms of forensic science. Now, they are working with Malawi Police Service, the judiciary, and they have also asked us to do the lab aspect. But because of this particular lab, the UNDP is working with other universities in Malawi to also strengthen some part of forensic science. And whilst Kamuzu provides like a model, the investment of UNDP is going to another university, but they have come to Kamuzu to say, what are you doing? What can we learn? Can you help us build similar facility at University of Malawi and others? So that partnership, that we have a center of excellence at Kamuzu, but we are now using as an exemplar to other institutions in Malawi. We are able to host people from the other universities to learn, and they go and take the knowledge to where they are. And we are also able to apply for grants together, where like the Malawi University of Science and Technology, they have areas that we don't have, and we are going to work with them. The Malawi University of Business and Science Technology, they are looking at work on bioengineering. We are working together, but because we have a center of excellence that they can also learn and they can replicate what they have there. Thank you.
I might add just one point. I think if I read your question correctly, it's a bit, are we diluting resources by expanding beyond just Malawi?
I don't think it would, in a sense, the expansion into other countries, or seen as a dilution in any way. It's whether, I suppose, and we have the debates in Scotland about where those centres of excellence are in different institutions, to spread what funding is available within me to allow that research to be undertaken in multiple universities, but you recognise where that expertise really has congregated, where teams have kind of evolved and developed, and support that, and allow us, as has been described, other universities to pick up related elements and develop their expertise in those areas. But I suppose in each country, you're probably going to have to replicate that.
Exactly, and there's obviously a need for that to happen in other places where Malawi is now giving us an example. And in a way, in our vision, this does not need to be different from what's happening in the UK, where there are just in the UK so and so many research intensive excellent universities, let alone across also Europe, etc. And that's kind of our very long-term vision. And so as much of that as can be supported.
Talking about excellent universities, you've teed me up nicely to welcome our colleagues from the University of Dundee, who are undertaking their own degree in international health and a few covering projects in Malawi, amongst others. I don't know whether any of you have any, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I don't know if you have any questions or comments on what we've had this evening.
As you can tell that I'm the spokesperson. Yeah, no, it was actually just really wonderful to hear you speaking. It's really interesting things that you're doing, and we all come from a medical background, so know what you're talking about as well, the vaccines, etc. I don't think any of us have any questions in particular. If I'm just speaking on behalf of us, but no, it's really wonderful to be invited here and be given the opportunity to actually see how these things go on. We're doing just to tell you who we are, by the way, we're doing a degree in international health. We're all intercalating this year, so that is why we're here. It's just a wonderful opportunity to see these connections with another country, and that kind of global health aspect of things that I don't know. Personally, I've never actually witnessed anything like this, and it's just very wonderful to see these connections in action, essentially.
Excellent. So I think you can go through the networks within Scotland. I think that's important as well. And it isn't necessarily all funneled through a single point in terms of the university advance, because we deleted that in the year then, but we can send an effort to come along. Peter, over to you.
Thanks, yes, this is a wonderful story, and really inspirational to see the way you have worked with your colleagues in Malawi on an absolutely equal basis with mutual respect, etc. And a wonderful example of how the Scottish Government funds can be best applied. I was chief officer at Clyde University. We had many partnerships over the years, and there was one issue which caused us a bit of difficulty, and that was continuity. We would establish these links, and everyone would think, great, and then the leading light in the other university would retire or something, and there was arrangements being made for succession. Now, I have no worries about the University of Glasgow's commitment to this and the number of people involved. Can I just say that Paul Garside, who's commemorated there, learned his trade at the University of Strathclyde, by the way, before let that pass. But so I have no worries at all that Glasgow University's commitment is deep and continuing. But however, is the same depth of commitment at the Kamuzu University? Has Professor Nepando got successors lined up to succeed him and keep this thing going from their side of the partnership?
I have to say, from the speakers this evening, none of them look remotely close to retirement. But Chris, I don't know whether you want to pick that up or.
Mohammed, do you want to start? You want me to start?
You can start and I will finish.
So I mean, I think longevity is not something that anyone, obviously by definition, something that any one person can provide. But I think that's why that is why we emphasize so much the emphasis on capacity, on partnerships, not on individuals. You know, as pointed out, there's some of the bright minds coming through, and this, you know, this is not just one or two people. There's a groundswell of really bright, enthusiastic scientists who are part of this partnership. And Professor Scheiner was talking about the energy of individuals and bringing people together, and her and this partnership that's put together has been trying to do that across institutions across Africa. So it's not just Malawi, and you know, there's investment from many sides to make this sustainable. This is a very good question. Mohammed.
Yeah, maybe just one or two things. Deliberately, I put in that slide where our Vice Chancellor was signing a memorandum of understanding with the Vice Chancellor of or what we call as the principal of University of Glasgow. And if I'm not wrong, it might be the first university where he's come and done the signing. Now, that is very important because the lab now moves away from being seen like Paul Garside or Mwapata. It's a Kamuzu University laboratory. And I'm actually very happy that the former chair of the Malawi Scotland Partnership, Dr. Anne Poya, she's in attendance here. She's also a council member for the Kamuzu University of Health Sciences, and she would know the kind of investment that the university has put. The other part is having the picture that Liz showed, where there was Dr. Victoria, who's been trained, but it was strategically supported by the lab to be sent to Glasgow, and now she's coming back to be hosted in that particular lab. We have also postdoctoral staff that are hosted in there, where they are coming up with their own research proposals. So we are thinking that now it's moving away from Paul Garside and Mwapata. It's a Kamuzu University facility where anybody can come and use. And that is important for sustenance because it moves from an individual, it becomes a university. And I would say we are very thankful even up to now because the Kamuzu University is putting in funding as part of its own budgeting to make sure that this is sustained.
Thanks very much. I suppose actually the description of revolving door in a sense gives you a view that this is not sort of set in aspect, it is constantly kind of morphing and evolving, which perhaps gets around some of the risks I think Peter very fairly identifies that can arise around individuals or even small teams. Any more questions? Yes.
Actually, a comment, first of all, congratulations totally to both the University of Glasgow and CUHES in what they've achieved, echoing what Peter has said and also what Daniel said at the beginning. But perhaps, Mphatso, you raised a very important point when you were first speaking about the long-term transition there had been and the time it takes to establish this. And I guess I just wanted to make a comment to say that I'm so glad that the Scottish Government did invest in the Blantyre Lab, but there is a need much more regularly to recognise that long-term is actually what will bring successful outcomes, not short-term funding. So that was my comment. So I'm pleased the Scottish Government to note that. But from the question point of view, it's actually an extension of that funding going forward and continuing. I can remember having very early discussions with Paul at the start of the lab when the funding had just been given, because I was involved in, as many of you know, as a clinical laboratory scientist in HPV vaccine and diagnostics, and how we had hoped that perhaps there could be an element within the lab that might address that, but the funding is an issue. So do you feel, both Chris and Mphatso, that you will have enough infrastructure funding to be able to say the lab is open to all, or are you dependent on someone already coming with a research grant to be able to take any project forward? Thank you.
Mphatso, do you want to, I don't know, do you want to comment on that first? You can start and Chris will finish.
Okay. Actually, I agree entirely with you. I think one of the best thing that has happened, I was involved in the initial funding schemes that Scottish government had, you know, those 2-year 300,000, which was good, but you couldn't sustain that. Now, having this long term is important because even now we have a business plan. We have opened it up to anybody because it's more like a platform where people can come and do research. But we have also opened it up as a business plan where people going to the hospital, there are some tests that they cannot find in the hospitals around, and we can do it at a cost. We have an agreement with one of the medical schemes in Malawi, providers, as a way of sustaining. You know, remember the equipment needs to have service, so we have to have service contracts. But the biggest thing from what I'm learning, and I'm agreeing with you, is to make sure that we have an interest from researchers that find the facility as good for them to do their work. And we are at that phase where we are making applications. Unfortunately, you know, research, I can tell you personally for myself, I've received, I think, 4, if not 5 rejections, where I've worked with colleagues to put in grant application. But there are also some applications that have been successful, though smaller. But we need to host more researchers, and we need to make sure that we are answering to the needs of what the researchers need for us to have in this particular laboratory. I don't know if I've answered that, but maybe Chris can also add on to that.
Honestly, you've answered so eloquently and completely. I don't have anything else to add. I do want to second the concept that long-term support, and that these things take long. They take long anywhere, but there are many challenges to getting these things up and running. So you have to have patience and continuity.
I think from memory, in fact, actually in the committee room across the way there, I remember we had a cross-party group meeting on that issue of funding, and And how long was long enough? And I remember one of the individuals that was speaking that evening was talking about a project, I think it related to tree planting, and they developed over, I think, 3 maybe 4 years, quite a significant body of evidence about the benefits of the project they were developing. But because the government at the time, and it's not necessarily a criticism of them, needed to free up, or felt they needed to free up space and capacity to be able to seed fund other projects, the funding was either tapered away or I think actually it cliff-edged off entirely. And so just at the point where this project was about to deliver and return value on the 3-4 years of funding that had gone in, the kind of legs were cut from under it. So I think it's always going to be a challenge for ministers. I think we will need to create capacity so that new projects that come in can actually be funded, but without losing sight of the fact that patient funding is absolutely required to support the development of projects like this. And back to the figures that I laid out when we came in, and Christy echoed, I mean, the scale of the challenge here, and the fact that it keeps reinventing itself, so that the progress you make is often 3 steps forward, but then 2 steps back. I think it's underscores that. All right, we've got Dr. Michael Mackenzie online has a question. Dr. Mackenzie, over to you.
Hi, yes, thanks very much. Wanted to say thank you very much to the whole team for the presentation. And really, I had a question about the RTSS vaccination and really the sort of team's opinion on how the rollout is going for that vaccination. I think what we've got is a preventative tool, and it's wonderful that we have it, and I can see that it's taken so much work to get to this stage. And I can certainly say that if we're desperately needing preventative tools, even in this country, in Scotland, within the UK, and we should, all of our healthcare services are under strain. So I just really wanted to ask that opinion, and just to also say to the sort of the committee here that, malaria is a really good thing to get behind. You can imagine if, for instance, we had a vaccination against sepsis in this, that we could use locally in this country, then what we would find if we could prevent that it would free up the health services to deal with all the other complex health problems. And malaria certainly does put a strain on all of the, the acute hospitals in Malawi. So I think when you're trying to sort of support the initiatives to bring malaria under control, you're really helping all of the health services in Malawi. And if you can even get some marginal gains, as it were, with focusing on the preventative of this severe disease, then you're having a kind of diffuse effect across it. So, but particularly the great scientists and healthcare workers working there in Malawi, how's the rollout going, and how do you see it going in the future? And does that initiative, such as the extended program and immunisation, Department of Health, need support in this kind of initiative?
Thank you very much indeed. And down the line to see if somebody leaping at, otherwise it's coming back your way, Patsy. Or Chris.
Chris.
Do you want me to take that? Do you want me to take the question?
Chris, I think you can take it because you're a clinician, you're working with malaria.
So the precise details on the success of the vaccine. So firstly, just to say, hasn't yet been rolled out. There's been a pilot which is in a couple of 100,000 children across 11 districts as part of a 1.7 million children pilot in 3 countries, Ghana, Kenya, and Malawi. The provisional statistics are highly successful. So good coverage in the intended districts. There's been some, so the first vaccine was something like between 80 and 90% in the different districts, and then it moves down with slightly less success because you have to give 4 vaccines. And the other thing that's been really good and that is clear is that doesn't stop people doing other malaria preventative things like bed nets or seeking hospital treatment. So those are the 2 things we know. The WHO has not unblinded all of the results of that pilot. And there's then, we've been told that there's going to be a much larger availability of vaccine across more countries, which will include all of the initial wider coverage in all of the initial piloted countries, including Malawi. So that's what we know. The precise details of that have not been released. And I also wanted to echo as a clinician working in a hospital with children, malaria is such an important cause of people coming to hospital. So even though this vaccine isn't perfect, the fact that it will reduce cases and hospitalizations is very important. So, and further progress also is very important. So, yeah.
I mean, I think that it goes back to the earlier point in terms of the patients and the investment, and actually making that wider argument beyond simply malaria, I think is another important factor. I'm conscious that my attempt to wind things up broadly around 7 o'clock is now for the birds, but Daniel wants to ask another question. So I'm going to give you the last question, Daniel, after which we will move to gin and tonics, but we will continue the networking, so questions that people have, they'll still be able to ask. So Daniel, over to you.
It was actually just adding more detail to what you're saying about the wider rollout. It's 18 million vaccines that have been given to 9 more countries, including the original ones. I don't have full detail, just headline on it just now. It'll be through the Gavi Vaccine Alliance and help delivered through UNICEF. So if anyone wants any further details, I might pass on a bit more information to Stuart, and he'll have my email address. If anyone wants anything else, let me know. I believe the procurement plan is for the last quarter of this year, with all this starting in 2024.
Excellent. It just occurred to me, the issue of kind of vaccine resistance, I mean, it has a problem. The figures you've been talking about in terms of numbers didn't really suggest so, but is that kind of overly?
I think it's too early to tell. I think it's too early to tell.
What about people were kind of okay, so can I, again, thank all of our speakers here this evening. It's been both fascinating, but as Peter said, utterly inspiring the work that you're doing. Sometimes that's an expression that's kind of overused, but it is entirely legitimate in these circumstances. So thank you very much indeed. I wish you all the very best. I'm sure our colleagues on the other side of the table will be joining you in unison at various stages through their own studies and their own work. But thank you very much indeed. We have, I don't think, a date yet set for the next meeting, but Stuart, I'm sure, will circulate something in due course. We'll probably do another one before the end of the year. So that's about as precise as I can be at this stage. But thank you very much indeed for your attendance. Hopefully you'll be able to stay on for a little bit longer for a bit of socialisation over Malawi gin and tonic. But again, can I ask you to show your appreciation for our speakers?
Yes, I have been.